Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into the precise timeline of December 7th, 1941. We are going to break down the exact minute-by-minute sequence of events, because that's really the only way to understand how a perfectly peaceful Sunday morning in Hawaii could instantly turn into a world-altering surprise attack. Just picture the sheer shock of it for a second. We're talking about an ordinary, quiet Sunday morning that was violently transformed into a devastating war zone, literally in the blink of an eye. To truly wrap our heads around the magnitude of this historical pivot, we really have to start by looking at the stark contrast of that morning. Because it wasn't just an attack, right? It was an absolute, total disruption of reality. Section 1. The calm before the storm. So you've got these massive, majestic battleships of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, all sitting totally calm at anchor in what was known as Battleship Row. The sailors were just going about their normal, peaceful Sunday routines, expecting nothing more than a quiet day in port. But what they didn't know was that a massive Japanese strike force was lurking just over the horizon. Now, a newly installed Opana radar station on the island actually did detect an incoming massive blip that morning, but tragically, the operators assumed it was just a scheduled flight of friendly American B-17 bombers. Section 2. The unseen threat appears. The sheer velocity at which history shifted that morning is just staggering. At dawn, you have a completely calm sunrise over the anchored fleet. Moments later, unseen planes arrive on the horizon, and in under 2 hours, there is complete and total devastation of the harbor. This timeline really forces us to stop and ask, how on earth could such a massive, powerful fleet be caught so entirely off guard? Well, to achieve that level of total surprise, the Japanese fleet had to sail for thousands of miles across the northern Pacific in absolute, strict radio silence. So waves of Zero fighter planes and torpedo bombers approached in these really tight, deliberate formations. At first, they just looked like dark silhouettes against the bright morning sky, and they were launched from aircraft carriers that had somehow managed to sit completely undetected out in the vast open ocean. Section 3. The first strike hits. This attack was devastatingly coordinated. It's like a perfectly timed, multi-pronged nightmare. First, torpedo bombers swooped in incredibly low, releasing their payloads just above the water and sending deadly weapons racing directly toward the ships. Second, high-altitude bombers dropped armor-piercing explosives squarely onto those anchored vessels along Battleship Row. And third, simultaneous strikes targeted the nearby American airfields right on the ground. This three-step synchronization created an immediate, paralyzing shock. The sailors were instantly enveloped in a coordinated strike from literally every possible angle. And that brings us to the most catastrophic moment of the entire assault. The USS Arizona took a direct hit from a massive 1,700-pound armor-piercing bomb. It completely penetrated the forward deck and ignited the ship's ammunition magazine. The resulting fireball and violent explosion sank that great ship in mere minutes. Tragically, nearly half of all the casualties from the entire Pearl Harbor attack, we're talking 1,177 men, were lost on the USS Arizona alone. Section 4. Total chaos in the harbor. Literally in a matter of minutes, the reality of a routine Sunday morning was completely erased. The calm waters turned to burning wreckage, and that soft morning light was choked out by thick black smoke and intense anti-aircraft fire. This sudden, violent destruction fundamentally altered both the physical and the emotional landscape of the harbor forever. Try to imagine the absolute sensory overload of being there. You've got sailors desperately scrambling to man their anti-aircraft guns amid total confusion. The sky is completely filled with black smoke and bright tracer fire just lighting up the atmosphere. Enemy planes are swooping remarkably low, bomb impacts are sending massive, chaotic splashes of water into the air, multiple ships are burning, defensive fires popping off in every single direction, and the men on the ground are quite literally fighting for their lives in absolute chaos. But the devastation actually went way beyond the water. At the nearby airfields, rows of American planes were being systematically destroyed right on the ground. A few desperate pilots ran toward the last remaining undamaged aircraft, frantic to take off and fight back. But in the end, over 300 U.S. aircraft were damaged or destroyed that morning, and most of them never even left the tarmac. It was a brilliant but incredibly brutal tactical move that essentially crippled the American aerial response before it could even begin. Through all of this destruction, there is one number that really should stick with you: 2. It is staggering to realize that this entire sequence of unprecedented devastation, the torpedoes, the massive explosions, the complete destruction of the airfields, it all lasted for under 2 hours. In less than 120 minutes, an entire fleet was crippled, and the trajectory of the 20th century was fundamentally altered.
Section 5. Aftermath and American Resolve.
As that heavy, black smoke finally began to clear, it revealed the absolute ruin of the Pacific Fleet. But amidst the widespread wreckage and the drifting smoke over the suddenly calm water, the American flag was still flying. It became this enduring symbol of survival, standing tall in the ruins, instantly beginning to shift the nation's mood from pure devastating tragedy to a really steely determination. And from the wreckage of that harbor, President Franklin D. Roosevelt took to his podium and delivered an iconic declaration to the world. December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. This wasn't just a statement of profound national grief. No, it was an immediate, incredibly powerful rallying cry that would echo through the years. So it leaves us with this massive question. How exactly does a single morning of sudden, unprecedented devastation manage to forge an unbreakable national resolve? The mechanics of this surprise attack were absolutely brutal, but its true legacy is how one of the darkest mornings in history instantly unified an entire nation. Thank you for learning with me today. Take this question with you and keep exploring the